Good morning, and welcome to another week of Journey with Christ. I'm your host, Mark Mitchell, a preaching minister here at the Park Avenue Church of Christ in Charleston, West Virginia. And I'm joined, as usual, by Steve Fox, our resident expert, and he's been preaching too long, 50 years. How you doing,
He's preaching long enough for the people to stop listening. I don't know exactly how long that is. But.
Well, you know, the beauty of it is, Steve, most people forget your sermons after a year. So, you can rotate every 3 years.
Start all over. Or I had Jerry Olson tell me one time, he said he enjoyed getting up in the pulpit and looking at the audience. Because he said it's hard to, he said it was hard to yawn and hiss at the same time. So you just get your little tiny accomplishments and run with them.
Well, listen, I appreciate what you do and how you've done it, and the impact you've made on a lot of people's lives through the service of Jesus. So, hey,
well, thank you.
You got a lot to hang your hat on there.
Thank you.
Last week, we picked up on Hebrews chapter 12, and we did a pile of verses the last time that we did it, 1 through 3. Now, I know that doesn't seem like doing very much, but I want to assure you that Hebrews 12, 1 through 3 are some of the most powerful verses in the Bible. So, last week, the last time we were here, which was 2 weeks ago, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, and fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. The first two verses are specifically about what Jesus has done, and Steve and I, in 35-40 minutes, talked about it quite a bit. Go back and I don't want to go rehash anything that we talked about already, but verse 3 is another one of those verses. It begins with a word that, Steve, sometimes you and I, when it comes up in Bible, think, well, is he serious? Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Because what he's about to tell us is some of the key points in our enduring opposition. You think everybody out there deals with opposition?
I think most everybody in any congregation deals with that.
I think it's part of the circumstance of humanity based in a fallen world. There's opposition here.
And you know what sometimes preachers get accused of really grabbing for an illustration just to say something that doesn't mean anything at all. I'm about to do that right now.
Guilty.
Guilty. Yesterday morning was really kind of weird, very, very odd. One of the oddest, most odd, however that is conjugated, in any place I'd been. Susie and I were at home. She was in the bathroom making herself beautiful. We had to stop for a while. No, I was something else. She was making herself beautiful, and I went out there and I was ready to go, and so I started changing my clothes, and I pulled up. Well, let me put it this way: a guy from our church called and said, "Did you get the email? We're canceling church." And I said, "No, I don't think so." Susie, no, we didn't get it. And there I am, literally, with one leg in a pant leg.
One out.
And one out. And
Can you make up your mind?
And I'm going,
what do? I'm stuck in the middle.
So I said, we're going to have church. So I pulled on my pants, and while I'm buckling up my pants, the phone rings, and it's another guy saying, "Do not come out. Do not come out. It's awful. This black ice is terrible. From here to my house, I saw three cars in a ditch. Don't come out." So now I got one pant leg on, one pant leg off, and I'm trying to get it off when somebody else, I think it was the minister, called to see if we were okay, and he said, "This is the determination that we're going to use, because it's pretty bad, and most of these people around here don't know how to drive in this stuff anyway."
I don't think the minister said that, but go ahead.
I think another minister said that.
I might have thought it, but
Well, if I was driving something that was big as a tank, I'd try to make it too. That's the safe way to go. And here I start thinking about, do I go to church or do I not go to church? Do I go to the assembly or do not? Am I stupid enough to ignore these people who are saying, do not go outside? Just don't do it. Or these other people, it ain't nothing. You'll just be sliding maybe half a mile,
yeah.
And as I was thinking about that, sitting there with one leg
leg out.
This is life. That's what life is. You're sitting there, some people give you some advice, you don't know what to do, you're really confused about how to handle it and what to make out of it, because both of these people are intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
And both of these people have talked to other people who are intelligent. And I'm thinking, this is what life is. So we finally chose, first we chose to go to another church, because I called one of the elders there. He said, "Yeah, we're having church, come on up." Well, Susie and I get outside for a millisecond, and I said, "No, we're not doing this." So we went back in, let the phone ring, and listened to the other people who were calling us. And that's really what life is. It's a bunch of choices. And sometimes those choices are exactly opposite of each other.
Well, and that's why the word consider is such a appropriate word, because, as you point out, everything that we endure, we're going to need to consider, the importance of our choice, the relevance of our choice, and the consequences of our choice. I know that some people think, well, if you were going to work on Monday morning, maybe you would have dealt with it. Maybe I would have. But at the same time, maybe they should rethink what they do on Monday then too. Mm-hmm. I was one of those that thought, it would be prudent not to drive, mainly because it was dangerous. Now, at 12 o'clock yesterday, the danger was pretty much over. But you never know. So you just do the best you can with the information you have.
And those people that got there are going to have to go back home. So you have no idea.
You don't know what the circumstances are going to be.
Susie doesn't like it when I say this, and she won't be watching this anyway. But my grandpa told me that the reason that happens is Mother Nature is a woman. And she can't make up her mind.
Okay, I'm leaving you alone with that when you're on your own.
I think Mrs. Who told me that? That preacher's wife from Griffithsville. I can't remember what her name is.
So I'm going to be starting to read from Hebrews chapter 12, beginning with verse 4, and I'm going to read down through verse 13, this little section, and we'll see where we go. I started to say, Paul, what does the Hebrew writer want us to consider? Beginning in verse 4. In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. And have you completely forgotten this word of encouragement that addresses you as a father addresses his son? It says, My son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and he chastens everyone he accepts as his son. Endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children. For what children are not disciplined by their father? If you are not disciplined, and everyone undergoes discipline, then you are not legitimate, not true sons and daughters at all. Moreover, we've all had human fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them for it. How much more shall we submit to the Father of spirits and live? They disciplined us for a little while as they thought best, but God disciplines us for our good, in order that we may share in His holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Therefore, strengthen your feeble arms and weak knees. Make level paths for your feet, so that the lame may not be disabled, but rather healed. One of my favorite aspects of this particular section of verses is how it turns what you might consider unfair treatment, as in God's doing you a favor. I have known, and I still know, people who are dealing with various illnesses, various struggles in their life through, whether it be MS, Parkinson's, going blind, or whatever it may be. And they would often say, I have one friend who said to me, I can't wait and see what God does with me with this. That's hard. That doesn't, you just don't.
Those words don't easily come out.
No. None of us, I know for a long time, and this may be the same for others, when I heard the word discipline, I would automatically think of punishment. Mm-hmm. But another understanding of what discipline is, when you want to train to be better at something, it's called a discipline. You're disciplining your body, you're disciplining your mind, you're disciplining all your faculties in order to be better to accomplish what needs to be accomplished. I honestly believe this discipline in this understanding is not speaking to punishment, it's speaking to improvement.
I think so too. And anybody that's been part of a sports team understands that.
I didn't like the running and the lifting and the exercise.
Like
no, I know you like running.
I couldn't wait to get there.
I know, but you're sadistic. You love to run.
I saw a bumper sticker one time that said, "Our sport is another kid's punishment." You're on a track team?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you shouldn't have done that. Go run 5 laps. Okay.
Oh, boy.
Oh, wow.
Wow, I get to go run 5 laps. Yeah. We're not, most of the time, we're not, have the proper mindset. It's oftentimes, it's sort of like when you hear people say, I have to do this or I get to do this. Mm-hmm. Have to is the negative side of any attitude. And tell me, Steve, how well does that work out in your life when it's a negative attitude that's forcing you to do something? Are you really enjoying it?
I think that all depends on what phase of your life that you're in.
Yeah.
If you're a younger person, you don't want to do any of that stuff.
No.
And in your head, you're going, I'm not doing any of that. I don't care what that coach said. I'm not doing any of that. Which in your mind is telling you, hey, good, you got out of that one.
Yeah.
But what you're really doing is you're punishing your own body. You're punishing your own investments in whatever sport you're trying to run.
Well, and you can tell a story about one of your grandchildren.
No, I've never done that.
No, I know that. But it's not only sports that requires discipline, but I remember you telling me every time you looked at one of your granddaughters, all you ever saw was her was reading a book. And now she's about to graduate with what?
She is going to have a degree in, what do they call it? Yeah, speech therapy.
Yeah. And I think you said
And she
summa cum laude?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I had 3 granddaughters, bang, 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 who, they never got a B in their life. And
That's a discipline.
no, that's the other side of the family.
But it's still a discipline.
It is a discipline. And he's talking about our 3rd granddaughter. All the rest of us would be up at the table playing cards. We love to play cards with the little kids. And every half hour later, somebody go, "Where's Laurel?" "I don't know. Where's Laurel? I thought you were watching him." "No, her." "I don't know where she is." "Oh, there she is. She's over there." She would spend literally 2 hours
Reading.
a book. She didn't want to waste her time playing cards with those old people. She wanted to, and I've got three graduates, 3 granddaughters that are graduating that are pretty intelligent.
Well, that's, now, don't get me wrong, discipline sometimes does feel like punishment. I remember, this is probably, well, it's 13, 14 years ago. I broke my leg, and I was put, as I often tell people, in a timeout by God, because I was not allowed to walk or maneuver around, because if I did, they would have to re-break the leg because it was just barely in place, and I didn't want to get the operation to put screws and plates in it. And so I didn't work for 8 weeks. I was self-employed. And a self-employed person, when they don't work, doesn't get paid. In the first week or two, no problems. But at that point in time, you kind of run out of what little bit of savings you may have, but you're looking in the future, and I'm thinking, I got 6 to 8 more weeks of this. What am I going to do? And I've started getting angry, frustrated. And I throw a little temper tantrum with God one Sunday morning because I can't go to church, and I'm madder and I'll get out. And I'm mad at God. And in the process, something's revealed to me that I'm reading, and all of a sudden I'm crying like a little baby on the couch. It is at that moment that when perceived discipline turned into benefit discipline. Mm-hmm. Punishment discipline turned to benefit discipline. And I didn't catch it in the beginning. What the writer is saying at the very beginning, verse 7, endure hardship as discipline, not punishment, but as God exercising your faith, exercising your tenacity, exercising your hope, exercising the elements that require us to make it and endure our struggle on this earth.
According to what the text says that we're looking at, do you think there was a time in your life when things went from I'm not going to deal with that anymore, I don't care what God's trying to prove me, to what he's trying to prove to me? And in that essence, in that same scenario, did God treat Jesus like that? Through his sufferings, did he learn to be obedient?
Oh yeah, I mean, we got that exact verse. Through his suffering, he learned obedience in Philippians. So yeah.
Isn't that tough? That's tough, man.
It is, honestly, there's no question in my mind that Jesus, being the Son of God, understood the principle from the get-go. But demonstrating it as a human, for a deity, that's a big deal. That's to say, okay, why am I have to go through this?
Mm-hmm.
But he understood that he had to. He had to endure everything that he went through.
And that was the answer to his question,
Is there any other way?
is there any other way we can do this?
And the answer was no.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, your will, not mine. Phew. I mean, when you consider that moment, that's just one of the hardest moments, I think, as a follower of Jesus Christ, that if you really want to, as I like to say to people, when trouble gets there, suck it up, Buttercup.
You've been watching too many cartoons.
Or too many John Wayne movies.
Oh, John Wayne would never say that.
No.
No. Well, if what you said is correct, and I think it is, in verse 1, he says, we're surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. Other people that are going through what we're going through have endured just like you have. And sometimes that's not any help. You know, it's like saying, well, we know you have cancer, but the guy laying there in bed, he's got cancer too. And
oh, well, that makes mine all better.
yeah.
No, it doesn't. But it does help you understand you're not the only one who's dealing with this.
Mm-hmm.
That is, in and of itself, sort of like a reality check moment. You know, it's just not you.
In my adult life, there have been at least 3 times that I have fought a bout of depression, and I mean, fight it. You get up in the morning and you fight it. There's dark days, you get up in the morning, fight it, and you go to bed that night and can't go to sleep because you're trying to fight it. And while you're going through that, and certainly I'm not the only ones that deal with this, when you're going through that, you really, really consider the fact that you're alone. Nobody can help me. Nobody can get me to do this and that and that. But they're doing that because that's a part of your discipline.
Yep.
And when he says we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, what he's saying is there are other people going through this. There are other people that have gone through the same thing, and they have learned. Now, I don't want to hear that.
No.
And if I have to do it, I want to do it in 15 minutes. You know, but
okay.
he says that,
I'm okay with you pulling the bandage off real fast. Okay. Is that all there is? All right.
That's it.
You know, and you're right. We have the witnesses that's gone through it. Then we have even the better example that Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith, which he persevered through anything and everything.
Mm-hmm.
All of this is this discipline, and I love the way the Hebrew writer attaches it to something, to a value. He says, if you're not learning discipline from your parent evidently doesn't love you.
If he or she lets you do whatever you want to do,
They don't.
they don't love you at all.
That's right. So, do you want to be an illegitimate child, or do you want to be with your real father?
Yeah.
That, for me, is sometimes the only thing that can help really give me, okay, you're right. You know, this is my Father's, as Jesus said in the garden, it's His will. Deal with it.
Well, one of the things I wanted to say to put a period behind that sentence that I was talking about was, I can't tell you, wouldn't you want to guess? I can't tell you how many people have called me, usually younger people, who have said, I hope I'm not avoiding a confidence here, but somebody told somebody who told somebody who told somebody else that you've had trouble with blah, 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 whatever it is. And most of the time it was depression.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to go through a point in my life where I finally learned how to say, I have a mental illness, and it's called depression.
Mm-hmm.
Because until you say that and mean that, nothing's going to get better in your life. So when he says, see there's this great cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely. Let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us. Now, when somebody calls me, and I'm sure they've done this with you, it may not be that same topic. It may not be the same category. It may not be, you may have been one of those depressed. Well, you're depressed. Well, look at what the great things you have in life. Just what you said a little while ago. Suck it up.
Suck it up, Buttercup.
Go for a walk. Well, you get back from your walk and you feel worse than when you started on it.
I get that we have conditions by which we will have to endure. I know people who not only have the mental issues that they deal with in life, but there are people who deal with the physical realities of their life. Some that don't, who have some form of deformity, or they have illnesses that come up. People are born blind. Some people, some people are born just not really altogether. There's something happened in either the womb or in the birthing process.
So when you see those people, you know that they're never going to get any help. They're past the point of being cured.
Right. That's why I think our mindset on certain things, I don't care if it's something that you deal with inside your brain, let's say depression or anxieties or whatever. You've got to get this. If you don't get this, you will never get better.
Exactly.
And this is not put in there as discipline as you're being punished. It is discipline in the fact that God wants to use your suffering to take you someplace that he can't maybe not take someone else.
And in my adult life, that's one of the hardest things to deal with ever.
It is.
Because you're thinking, I'm leading a decent life. I'm doing what God wants me to do, and all of a sudden, bang.
Yeah.
You got
your Job moment there. Like, hey, God, what's up, God?
Yeah, right. This is one of the most difficult passages, especially when you consider the life of Jesus. Let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us. Looking to Jesus. Now, what am I going to do when these things hit me? What am I going to do when I have a death in my family? What am I going to do when I lose my job? What am I going to do when things at church are just awful? He says, run with perseverance. That's a great word. Just keep doing it step by step, step by step. And then, after you run with perseverance, you look to somebody. Well, who can I look to? You start with Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross. Oh, wait a minute. This guy's out of his mind. Because he says that Jesus was looking forward to going to the cross because of the fact that he despised the shame and he endured the cross because it brought joy to him. Now, you got to pull that theological line a long way down the road before this starts to make any sense. But he says you start with Jesus. Jesus, he understood that, and he lived his life trying to understand that. So you may be too. You might be doing the same thing.
Absolutely. But getting back to what we were, like down in verse 10, they disciplined us for a little while as they thought best. This is speaking of your parents, but God disciplines us for our good in order that we may share in his holiness. Now this holiness is a word we use to mean set apart. It's specific in use. It's important to some element that God is intended. Verse 11 is the one verse that just kind of like, we all just like, seriously, Lord? No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Duh. Later on, though, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. as I mentioned earlier when I was talking about it was almost between 10 and 12 weeks that I was incapacitated. And it was almost 5 months, 6 months before I got back to work. I endured a lot of financial issues, the pain, but in all honesty, there was the hardship produced a level of righteousness that I had never experienced. Now, it wasn't like I'd got myself to a higher plane, no. God lowered me, and in that lowering me, I learned a higher idea.
And I guarantee you that during that time, and you don't have to go into a long, detailed account of this, I guarantee you there was a time in your life when people came to you and said, this happened to you, it's happening to me, what do I do?
Yeah.
And when he says here, the courage that you are punished by him, for the Lord disciplines him whom he loves, and then, shall we not much be subjected to the Father of spirits and live? For they disciplined us for a short time at their pleasure, but he disciplines us for our good, that we may share his holiness. I would not even try to guess or make a list of how many times I've come to some point in my life where I think of, my dad taught me that, or my mom taught me that. And sometimes I listened and sometimes I didn't. And you can find yourself in a situation where you are doing something that you know is wrong, and those training sessions might have been 5 minutes long, might have been 20 minutes long.
I can still hear my mama's voice in my head.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt that at all. And everything she was telling you was advantageous to your lifestyle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, when you're going through it's sort of like you can't see anything but the pain, the reality of your suffering. It's not until later that you realize what a favor God did for you. The discipline which you took as punishment now has produced a harvest, because now I have the ability to handle things I couldn't handle before. And
you're stronger, and that seems so simple, but people are stronger when they do that.
When they
listen to all the people around them who are giving them good advice.
Well, students discipline themselves by studying. When athletes discipline themselves by strength training, by cardiac. When workers, let's say anyone's being trained to be a mechanic, there's a discipline. A carpenter, there's a discipline that you go through in order to learn. Every worthwhile quality of your life will require a form of discipline. There's none of us are born perfect. Not even you, Steve.
Oh, well,
I'm sorry.
We'd have to call Susie on the phone and ask her that. I was a junior in high school, and every morning I did the same routine. I had 3 horses that I took care of myself. I would go in the barn, I would turn on the water over the tank, and then I would go get their feed and take a coffee can, and dump feed in here, and take care of those 3 horses. Well, my dad kept saying, listen, feed them first, cut off the water supply, then go do whatever else you got to do with the other animals. I said, okay, but that was just stupid. I could turn the water on and let it run while I was doing this other stuff. I wouldn't have to work. Well, I know you're shocked to hear that one morning
You left the water on.
I left the water on, and when my dad came home that night, it was Niagara Falls down our driveway. And he decided that I needed to be disciplined, because he had told me that on several occasions not to do that. He took me inside, and I will never forget this. He set me in front of the fireplace. He gave me many, many sheets of paper. And he wrote on there, "I will not leave the water on. I will not leave the water on." He said, "I want 1,000 of those." So I wrote, "I will not leave the water on" 1,000
You
times.
make my hand tired just doing it.
And so the whole time I was doing that, I was upset with him, but he was trying to teach me something. He was trying to teach me to listen.
Do you remember the one that used to be you could put the dot dot under each, like, okay, I'm using this word again, dot 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 dot.
No.
Well, I'm sure some of our listeners and watchers will know that when you're writing something out, if you want to just copy it, I'm using this same word right here. You put a dot dot underneath it, and it counts. I might even try to go about with putting dots all the way across there and saying, "I will not leave the water on
You know
again."
what I did? It got so bad, I started to write, I will not leave. Anything to
Break up the monotony.
break up the monotony. So, Dad, he didn't mistreat me. He wasn't mistreating me at all. He was just saying, "Look, I want you to listen, and next time I give you some advice, why don't you go ahead and take it?" Now, the funnest part of that story is when I got done, and I was so proud. I don't know how thick it was. The papers were like that. I was so proud. And my dad said, "Hey, come here in the living room." I said, "Okay."
Throw them in the fire.
I went in the living room, sat down on a chair. He handed me those papers, and he said, "One at a time." I would throw one in the fire, sit there and wait for it to combust. Throw the next one in the fire. I threw 1,000. I will not leave the water. I never left the water on again.
No, it's amazing what that discipline did for you.
That discipline was absolutely spot on.
I'm going to go home and make sure Susie knows this cure for you. I want to end with
Throw
these.
them in the fire? What are you talking about?
I want to end with these two verses because I
Okay.
really want to. We're at our end here. Verse 12 and 13. Therefore, strengthen your feeble arms and weak knees. There's encouragement. Make level paths for your feet. There's advice, discipline. So that, why is this important? That the lame may not be disabled, but rather healed. Well, when did we get to bring in the lame and disabled into this, and those who need healed? In other words, people who are dealing with the same thing you're dealing with are watching you. And they want to see what you do with what's happening to you in your life. If you complain and blame God, then they're not going to trust and why bother with God then? But if you can be an example to them in accepting the discipline of God and being encouraged by it and treating it like I'm his favorite child, that this is happening. If he did it to Jesus, am I better than Jesus? Should I not have to go through the same stuff? And from example of my life, I haven't had to endure anything what he's endured. But do I complain about what I do endure? We need to accept the fact that what we go through is our lives are testimony to what our faith in God is. And if our testimony is ridicule and complaining, we won't lead others. We've actually may discourage people from ever coming.
For they disciplined us for a short time at their pleasure, but he disciplines us for our good, that we may share his holiness. I don't believe that verse. Lots of times in my life that I've read that verse and said, no, that's not the way it is. I need to get myself to a point in my spiritual life that I can read that verse and say,
Yeah.
The reason I'm going through this is because God wants me to share his holiness. Well, what about all the stuff I'm going through right now? And every person in this room could give you a list. What about those people? well, they're going to have to come along for the ride too.
That's right. We all will endure various things. Sometimes it's physical pain, sometimes it's social pain. A lot of kids today grow up, this is just mind-boggling to me. One person said, I would rather do something terrific and be remembered and die than to live a life where nobody knows who I am. That's sad.
Mm-hmm.
That's extremely sad. So all of us are going to endure hardships. Are you going to do this perfect? No. You're going to complain every now and then, but every time you taste the words as they come out, remember, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who endured. We got to endure.
Mm-hmm. The reason we endure is because there's joy on the other side.
There's a blessing that you just don't see till you get there. You don't see it. I tell people now that what I went through, and that's not the only things I've ever gone through, but that's the one that, to me, at the moment, seemed the most unfair. A lot of times the others, I thought, well, I had that coming.
Mm-hmm.
This one seemed completely unfair. But boy, what a blessing on the other side of it that I could not see. One of my friends said it to me. My friend who says to me, I can't wait and see what God does with you in this moment. And in the beginning, I said, yeah, I'm kind of anxious too. I started complaining. Well, next week we will begin right there. I apologize. As always, we always go longer than I intend for us to go, but hey.
We always go longer?
We got two long-winded preachers here, and one of us with a little bit more wind now than yeah. You're included in this.
Oh,
50 years of preaching, you still get to count.
It's under there somewhere.
You got anything you would like to say that add to before we exit?
That's a passage that we could study for the next year and not cover it all.
No.
Whoever wrote this, wouldn't you like to just sit down and shake their hand and say, thank you very much? That was awesome.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you wrote.
I think the minute you get to Hebrews chapter 10 and you go to the end of the chapter, Hebrews 1 through 9 is almost like a lesson in hermeneutics as it applies to a Jew conversion to a Christian. But Hebrews 10 is like where he gets into the good. It's like, all right, I made it to the outer part of the cake. Now I'm into the filling. The good stuff. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we're so glad you have tuned in this week, and we look forward to being with you again next week. So on behalf of Steve and I, God bless. Have a great week.
And it's really nice to be back after those few weeks where we weren't.
Yeah, where we weren't.
Yeah.
See you next time.